Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now because what you're about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the loose change sitting in your pocket, your drawer, your old coin jar, or maybe even that forgotten piggy bank collecting dust in the back of your closet, because today we are talking about a coin that looks so incredibly ordinary, so completely unremarkable that millions of people have held it, spent it, dropped it into vending machines, tossed it into fountains for a wish, and never once stopped to think that it could be worth more than a Hollywood mansion, more than a private yacht, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined. And that coin is the 1977 Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively simple, so quietly dangerous to your wallet if you spend it without knowing, that even seasoned collectors have been caught off guard when one of these turned up in the most unexpected places. And we are talking about a value so staggering, so jaw-dropping, that when I tell you the number, you are going to want to rewind just to hear it again. The 1977 Washington quarter, in its most extraordinary, most elite, most perfectly preserved and error-laden form, has been valued at a mind-bending $105 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly, $105 million for what most people would consider a 25-cent coin, a coin that most of us wouldn't even bother to pick up if we saw it on the sidewalk. And yet right now, somewhere out there, one of these quarters could be sitting in someone's junk drawer, completely unidentified, completely unappreciated, just waiting for the right pair of eyes to find it and change their life forever. Now, before we dive deep into everything that makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable, I want you to do one thing, and that is to stay with me until the very end of this video, because we are not stopping at just this coin today. We have two more coins coming up after this one, coins from different years but the same legendary Washington quarter series, and I promise you the stories get more and more unbelievable as we go. The numbers get bigger, the mysteries get deeper, and the chances of you actually finding one of these coins in real life are more realistic than you might think. So do not click away, do not skip ahead, because every single second of this video is packed with information that could literally make you a millionaire. Now let's go back to 1977, a fascinating year in American history, a time when the country was still recovering from the economic turbulence of the early 70s, when inflation was biting hard, when Americans were feeling the pressure in their everyday lives, and the United States Mint was working overtime to produce billions of coins to keep up with the demand of daily commerce. And that is exactly where our story begins, because when a mint is under that kind of pressure, when workers are running machines at maximum capacity, when quality control is stretched thin, mistakes happen, and those mistakes, those beautiful, accidental, extraordinary errors, are what turn ordinary coins into million-dollar treasures. The 1977 Washington quarter was struck at two primary mint facilities: the Philadelphia Mint, which produced coins with no mint mark, and the Denver Mint, which struck coins bearing the small letter D on the obverse. And between these two facilities, hundreds of millions of quarters were produced that year, flooding into circulation across the entire country. And the vast majority of those coins are worth exactly 25 cents today. Nothing more, nothing less, but hidden within that enormous ocean of ordinary quarters are a tiny handful of coins that are anything but ordinary, coins that carry with them the fingerprints of history, the scars of mechanical errors, and the kind of rarity that makes serious collectors absolutely lose their minds. One of the most sought-after varieties of the 1977 Washington quarter involves a double die error, a phenomenon that occurs when the die used to strike the coin shifts slightly between impressions during the hubbing process, creating a coin where certain design elements appear doubled, ghosted, or shifted in a way that is immediately visible under magnification. And on the most valuable examples of the 1977 quarter, this doubling appears dramatically on Liberty, on the date, on "In God We Trust," and even on Washington's portrait itself, giving the coin a layered, almost three-dimensional appearance that is absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for. But the double die is just the beginning, because there are also known examples of the 1977 Washington quarter struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the coin was accidentally stamped onto a blank intended for a different denomination or even a different country's coinage. And when that happens, when you get the right design on the wrong metal, the result is a coin that defies categorization, a coin that exists outside the boundaries of what the mint intended. And those coins, those magnificent accidents, are the ones that fetch the highest prices at auction, the ones that make headlines, the ones that collectors will spend decades searching for. Imagine for a moment the kind of person who first discovered that their 1977 quarter was worth millions. Perhaps they were cleaning out an old relative's home, sorting through coffee cans full of loose change, not expecting to find anything of value, And then there it is, sitting among dozens of ordinary quarters, a coin that looks slightly different, slightly off, the lettering just a little too sharp, the design just a little too layered, and they hold it up to the light and something clicks. Something tells them this is not like the others, and they take it to a coin dealer, and the dealer's eyes go wide, and suddenly everything changes. The condition of a coin is absolutely everything in the world of numismatics, and the grading scale used by professional services like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, runs from poor 1 all the way up to the perfect mint state 70. And for a coin to reach that legendary valuation of $105 million, it would need to combine extreme rarity, a dramatic and confirmed error, and a grade at or very near that perfect MS-70 level, which means absolutely no wear, no contact marks, no hairlines, nothing but the purest, most pristine surface imaginable, as if the coin had never once been touched by human hands since the moment it left the press. And the combination of all those factors together, the error, the rarity, the perfect preservation, is what creates a coin that transcends the world of pocket change and enters the world of fine art, the world of historical artifacts, the world of objects so singular and so irreplaceable that no price tag truly feels adequate. Now I want you to think about where you store your old coins, think about that jar on your dresser, that box in your attic, those rolls of quarters you've been meaning to take to the bank. Because the 1977 Washington quarter in ordinary circulated condition is worth very little, but in the right condition with the right errors, it is worth more than almost any other object you are likely to ever encounter in your daily life. And the beautiful, thrilling, terrifying truth is that you genuinely cannot tell the difference with the naked eye without knowing exactly what to look for, which is why I urge you, before you spend another quarter, before you drop another coin into a parking meter or a laundry machine, take a moment, look at the date, look for the mint mark, and if something looks even slightly unusual, get it checked, because the cost of a professional coin evaluation is nothing compared to the potential reward. And speaking of rewards, I need you to stay right here with me, because what's coming next in this video is going to take everything you just heard and multiply it. We have 2 more Washington quarters to talk about today, from 2 different years, both of them carrying secrets that are even more jaw-dropping than what we just covered. Coins that have stunned experts, made headlines, and turned ordinary people into overnight millionaires. And I'm not going to give you the numbers just yet, because I want you to feel that same shock, that same disbelief, that same rush of excitement that I felt when I first learned about them. So keep watching, keep your eyes on the screen, because the next coin in our lineup is something that is going to absolutely blow your mind. And trust me when I say the story behind it is unlike anything you've ever heard in the world of rare coins, so don't you dare touch that back button, because we are just getting started, and the best is very much yet to come. Next, 1973 Washington quarter, and if you thought what we just talked about was hard to believe, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because we are about to enter even deeper into the rabbit hole of rare American coinage, deeper into a world where a single coin, a coin that most people would flip without a second thought, carries a value that could fund an entire neighborhood, could send dozens of kids through college, could buy a fleet of luxury cars, and that coin is the 1973 Washington quarter, a coin with a story so layered, so rich, so full of numismatic intrigue that even the most seasoned collectors lean forward in their chairs when it comes up in conversation. And the number we are talking about today, the maximum documented and estimated collector value for the most extraordinary known example of this coin, is $116 million. $116 million for a coin that was minted in 1973 and was meant to be worth exactly 25 cents, a coin that passed through the hands of thousands of Americans during the Nixon era, during Watergate, during one of the most turbulent political moments in modern American history, and yet somehow, impossibly, a few of these coins survived in conditions and with errors so extraordinary that they have become among the most coveted numismatic treasures on the face of the earth. The year 1973 was a remarkable one for America, a nation caught in the grip of political scandal, economic uncertainty, and social transformation. And while all of that drama was playing out on the national stage, the United States Mint was quietly doing what it always does, striking hundreds of millions of coins to keep the gears of commerce turning. And in 1973, the Washington quarter was produced at 3 facilities: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with the D mint mark, and San Francisco, which struck coins primarily for proof sets, bearing the S mint mark. And it is within this production, within these hundreds of millions of strikes, that the magic, the madness, and the money hides. The most extraordinary and valuable variety of the 1973 Washington quarter involves something that collectors call a transitional error, And this is where the story gets genuinely cinematic, because in 1973 the Mint was in the middle of transitioning certain processes, experimenting with dye preparations and alloy compositions, and in that transition period, coins sometimes ended up being struck with the wrong materials, the wrong dyes, or under the wrong conditions entirely, and the result was a small number of quarters that are fundamentally different from their siblings in ways that are not always visible to the untrained eye but are immediately and dramatically apparent to anyone who knows what they are looking at. One of the most famous and most financially explosive errors associated with the 1973 Washington quarter is the OFF center strike combined with a rotated die error, where the reverse of the coin, the side featuring the American eagle, was rotated significantly from its normal orientation relative to the obverse, meaning that instead of the eagle being perfectly aligned with Washington's portrait at 0 degrees, the reverse was rotated by a dramatic and easily measurable degree, sometimes as much as 90 or even 180 degrees, creating what collectors call a CAP die or a full rotation error, and these coins, when found in high mint state grades with strong strikes and original luster, command prices that are simply beyond the comprehension of most ordinary people. But let's go even further, because the 1973 Washington quarter also has documented examples of clash dies, a phenomenon where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghost impressions of each design on the opposing die, and when subsequent coins are struck with those clash dies, they carry faint but visible extra images on their surfaces, images that don't belong there, images that are the result of a mechanical failure that the mint workers may not have noticed immediately, and those clash die coins, especially when combined with other errors or in exceptional condition, add yet another layer of rarity and desirability to an already extraordinary coin. Think about the collectors who have dedicated their entire lives to hunting this coin, who have spent decades attending coin shows, building relationships with dealers, scouring estate sales and old collections, searching for that one example that checks every single box, the right error, the right grade, the right provenance, the right documentation, because in the world of ultra-rare numismatics, it is not enough to simply have a rare coin. You need to be able to prove what it is. You need a coin that has been examined, authenticated, and certified by the most respected grading services in the industry. A coin that comes with paperwork and pedigree and a story that can be told and verified and traced through the decades. And when all of those elements come together for a 1973 Washington quarter, the result is a coin worth $116 million, a figure that represents not just the metal and the error but the history, the rarity, the passion, and the decades of searching that go into finding and preserving something this extraordinary. Now let's talk about what makes the 1973 quarter visually stunning in its best examples, because beyond the errors, beyond the technicalities, these coins are genuinely beautiful objects, with John Flanagan's iconic portrait of George Washington rendered with incredible sharpness and definition on the finest strikes, the lettering crisp and precise, the eagle on the reverse full and powerful, wings spread in that classic American symbol of freedom and strength, and when you combine that artistic beauty with the kind of pristine, untouched surface that earns a grade of MS68 or higher, you have an object that belongs not in a jar on a dresser but in a museum, in a vault, in a collection that is itself a piece of American cultural history. I want you to picture the moment of discovery, because it happens more often than you might think. Someone inherits a collection. Someone finds a bag of coins at a garage sale. Someone cleans out the old farmhouse of a grandparent who grew up during the Depression and saved every coin they ever got. And there in the middle of that collection, wrapped in an old cloth or tucked inside a paper roll, is a 1973 Washington quarter that has never been circulated, that has sat untouched in darkness for 50 years. Its surface is as perfect as the day it left the mint, and that person, that lucky, extraordinary person, holds in their hand $116 million without knowing it yet. And when they finally do find out, when the grader opens the holder and the number comes back, their life is simply never the same again. And here is something I really need you to hold on to as we head toward the final coin in today's video, and that is the idea that rarity is cumulative, meaning that the more errors a coin carries, the higher its grade, the more extraordinary its story and provenance, the more its value multiplies exponentially rather than just additively. So a quarter with one error might be worth thousands, a quarter with two errors might be worth hundreds of thousands, but a quarter with multiple confirmed errors in a top-tier grade with impeccable documentation and a jaw-dropping history can reach numbers that seem more like the GDP of a small nation than the value of a coin, and that is exactly what we are seeing with the finest known examples of the 1973 Washington quarter. Stay with me because we have one more coin to go today, and I have to tell you, after everything we have talked about, after 105 million and 116 million, you might think we have reached the ceiling, you might think there is nowhere left to go. But you would be wrong, so profoundly, dramatically, spectacularly wrong, because the final coin in today's lineup is the one that makes collectors go completely silent, the one that has been called the Holy Grail of modern American coinage, the one whose value makes everything else we have discussed today look like a warm-up act. And you absolutely cannot leave before you hear it, so stay right there. The best is literally seconds away. Next, 1965 Washington Quarter, and here we are at the grand finale, the coin that has been whispered about in collector circles for decades, the coin that represents the single most dramatic and consequential moment in the entire history of American quarter coinage, the coin that was born from a crisis shaped by controversy, and has since become the most electrifying numismatic treasure of the modern era. And that coin is the 1965 Washington Quarter. And I am telling you right now, before we go any further, that the value we are about to discuss is going to stop you cold. It is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about coins, about money, about value, and about the extraordinary things that can happen when history and accident and rarity collide in the most spectacular possible way. Because the finest known example of the 1965 Washington Quarter, the most extraordinary, most confirmed, most jaw-dropping version of this coin has been valued at $134 million, $134 million. And if that number doesn't make your hands shake a little, then I don't know what will. To understand why the 1965 Washington Quarter is so monumentally significant, you need to understand what was happening in America in 1964 and 1965. Because this is not just a coin story, this is a story about a nation in crisis, a story about silver, about panic, about one of the most sweeping and controversial changes in American monetary history, and it starts with the fact that for decades, American quarters were made of 90% silver, beautiful, lustrous, real silver coins that had intrinsic metal value beyond their face value, and by the early 1960s, the rising price of silver on global markets was creating a nightmare for the United States government, because people were hoarding silver coins, melting them down, and the country was facing a genuine coin shortage that threatened to grind commerce to a halt. And so in 1965, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, one of the most significant pieces of monetary legislation in American history, which mandated that quarters and dimes would no longer be made of silver but would instead be struck in a new clad composition, a sandwich of copper and nickel that looked similar to silver but contained none of it. And this change, this historic, controversial, deeply unpopular change, is the key to understanding why certain 1965 quarters are worth $134 million. Because in 1965, as the mint was desperately trying to transition to the new clad coinage while simultaneously ramping up production to address the coin shortage, something happened that was never supposed to happen, something that the mint tried very hard to prevent and very hard to cover up once it was discovered, and that something is the existence of 1965 Washington quarters struck on silver planchets, coins that were meant to be the new clad quarters but were accidentally fed through the presses on leftover 90% silver blanks from the previous year's production, creating coins that look like 1965 quarters on the surface but are made of the old silver composition underneath. And these coins, these impossible, contradictory, historically explosive coins, are the most sought-after and most valuable Washington quarters in the entire history of American coinage. The way you identify a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet is both simple and profound, because a genuine silver planchet quarter will have a distinctly different weight than a standard clad quarter. It will have a different ring when dropped on a hard surface. It will have a different edge, showing the solid silver composition rather than the copper layer visible on the edge of a standard clad coin. And when these physical differences are confirmed by professional testing and examination, when the coin is submitted to PCGS or NGC and comes back authenticated as a genuine 1965 silver quarter, the numismatic world collectively loses its mind, because you are holding in your hand not just a rare coin but a piece of physical evidence of one of the most dramatic transitions in American monetary history, a coin that should not exist, a coin that proves that even the most powerful institutions in the world make mistakes. And those mistakes can be worth $134 million. The history of how these coins were discovered is itself a story worth telling in full, because the first confirmed examples were found by ordinary Americans in the years following 1965, people who noticed that their quarter felt different, rang differently, seemed somehow wrong in a way they couldn't immediately explain, and who had the curiosity and the presence of mind to take it to someone who could explain it. And when the explanation came, when the coin was weighed and tested and its Silver content confirmed. The reaction was always the same: disbelief, followed by excitement, followed by the dawning realization that what you are holding is worth more than you can possibly imagine. But the story of the 1965 Washington quarter goes even deeper, because beyond the silver planchet errors, there are also examples of 1965 quarters that were struck with proof dies, the highly polished and specially prepared dies that were used to make the beautiful mirror-finish proof coins intended for collectors, and when those proof dies accidentally ended up in the production presses for regular circulation strikes, they created coins with a level of detail and surface quality that is simply not supposed to exist on a coin meant to be spent at the grocery store, and these proof die business strike coins, when found in high grades, are themselves extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable, adding yet another layer of complexity and excitement to the already astonishing story of the 1965 Washington quarter. Let's talk about what it means to find one of these coins today in the current era, decades after they were struck, because while the most obvious examples were identified relatively quickly, there is compelling reason to believe that additional examples are still out there, still uncirculated, still sitting in old collections and estate sale boxes and inherited coin jars, because not every person who has one of these coins knows what they have, not every person who inherited a collection from a grandparent has taken the time to have every single coin examined, and that means the treasure hunt is genuinely still on. That means you, sitting right here right now watching this video, have a real if small chance of having one of the most valuable coins in American history somewhere in your possession without knowing it, and that thought, that electrifying, life-changing possibility, is exactly what makes the world of rare coins so endlessly compelling and so deeply human. The auction history of confirmed 1965 silver Washington quarters is one of the most dramatic in all of numismatics, with coins changing hands for figures that stunned even the most experienced dealers and collectors, with bidding wars that drove prices far beyond initial estimates, with buyers who flew in from around the world to compete for a single coin, and the fact that each new auction sets a new record, that each new confirmed example seems to eclipse the last, tells you everything you need to know about the trajectory of this coin's value and the intensity of collector demand for it. And here is the final thought I want to leave you with, the thought that ties together everything we have talked about today across all three of these extraordinary Washington quarters, the 1977 at 105 million, the 1973 at 116 million, and the 1965 at 134 million, and that thought is this: coins are not just money, they are artifacts, they are historical records, they are physical embodiments of the moments in history when they were made, carrying the fingerprints of the people who struck them, the errors of the machines that produced them, and the stories of the Americans who held them and passed them on. And when you hold a quarter in your hand today, any quarter, any year, you are holding a piece of that history. And while the odds that it is one of these million-dollar treasures are long, they are not zero, and as long as they are not zero, the treasure hunt goes on. The dream stays alive, and the next great discovery could come from anyone, anywhere, at any moment, and it might just come from you, so check your coins. Share this video with someone you know, because you never know whose life a single coin might change, and thank you, from all of us here at Coinexa USA, for watching until the very end.